Welcome back to the most professional StarCraft 2 with our first grand finalist, the three-time world champion and widely considered to be the greatest player of all time. The Zerg in the blue, the finisher. It's Serral, facing off against the only other player in that conversation, the 9-time GSL champion, the Terran in the red, the man, the myth, the Maru, in a best-of-7 Terran versus Zerg grand finals to the $10,000 LiuLi Cup. And before we get started, it'd be incredible if you could smash that like button, or maybe even subscribe. Oh, we got the algorithm. And Jimmy, what are we at? Jimmy. 1,801 likes on this video, on this cast. And I'll cast another one. And I'll probably do it anyways, because I don't know what else I do with my life. But thank you for watching. Hopefully, you've had a good day so far. And hopefully it's about to get just a little bit better. As the first Reaper comes in, the Zerglings will duel with it in order to prevent any direct damage to the drones. But so far, Maru undeterred. The Queen comes out, slaps it, and inject, and will shoo the Reaper away, not necessarily in that order. And already, Maru, 2 command centers, and he's not being very subtle about it. Slaps down the second command center right at the bottom of the ramp. He says, I'll show you what I got. Serral, with his Overlord quite far away, Maru's made a bit of a, not a name for himself, but he's had a tendency to send out those early Marines in order to try to snipe off the Overlords. And I think, well, none of that matters, because 2 Zerglings just kind of walked right by. Will delay the command center, the SCV not getting any extra hazard pay. Meanwhile, Maru microing and... Get off my creep. Queens are able to take out the Reaper. I don't know if it ended up getting a drone. Yes, 1 drone, but 2 Zerglings getting a full scout, delaying the 3rd command center, and getting up the ramp to spot not 1, but 2 barracks. A very important scout for Serral this early on, which narrows down the option severely. It's not going to be a super quick Banshee. It might be some Hellions, but honestly, probably not that many. The Marine is going to drive the Overlord onto a more obscure pervert pillar, where it will look down on everyone. But the early game shenanigans have ended, and the drama has just begun. In their last 16 matches, over the last over 3, I think about 4 years, I looked it up just before this time, Serral has won 15 of them. And most of the time, the series have not been that close, at least in terms of games. There's been some close calls, but 15 out of 16. So, in case you're wondering why there's not as much competition between who we call the greatest of all time, it's because Serral has kind of closed the book on that one, at least in many ways. But Maru, over the last few months, has had a resurgence. Even though GSL isn't as prevalent as it once was, finding more success in tournaments that aren't necessarily based in Korea over the course of several months. So, if there was ever a time for Maru to turn the page, well, maybe today is a good one. 6 roaches on the way. Serral with +1 carapace. He knows for a science fact it's not going to be, well, at least a within a certain margin. It still could be Mac, but it's almost certainly not. With 2 barracks before the... What, Brenda, where? I have a plan, Susan. Is this a creep drop highway? Serral with the creep highway in order to smash Maru with as many roaches as possible. He only has 51 drones, which is positively frugal for the Zerg at this stage of the game. The intent being to just batter down the door, completely deny the 3rd base. Ravagers in production. The Overlord has slowly trailed the Queens across, will drop the creep, and, well, so it begins. The creep spread a little bit more forward than usual. Everything the creep touches is our domain, Susan. But we're putting creep right on their side. Did I stutter? I don't... Sorry. The medevacs are sent out. It's a fake. 2 fake medevacs sent across the map. And Serral is not calling the bluff. Maru with a 200 IQ play there. And taking a little bit of pressure off, actually tries to shut down the creep. But both players breaking out some almost never seen and very rare strategies to try to get some sort of mental advantage. And so far, well, Serral, he's not going to try to break into a 2-base Terran. He knows there's the third command center, of course, which kind of amusingly, Maru ended up putting in what is a more typical location. And Serral has already maneuvered into a much more macro-oriented position. And now, no longer bluffing, he picks up 16 Marines. We'll drop him out. Serral's star senses are tingling. He knows the map is dark and full of Terrans. But he didn't know exactly where. That means his 4th base is going to be delayed. But okay, let's not be too crazy. Ends up taking out the drone. And the creep! The creep all the way across the map. The queen's ambling across. The creep is, wow, covering a uncomfortable percentage of the map, especially considering how few queens Serral had in the early game. He has a grand total of 4. He sent half of his queens across the map to invade Terran territory, which, you know, kind of seems on brand for the monarchy, but Maru has 125 supply against 161, but while quantity might have a quality all its own, roaches are not known for being quality in and of themselves. So not really demonstrating the exact gap in power here. As the Roach Ravager is pretty good on the open field, but with medevacs and siege tanks to back him up, it takes a significant supply lead to think about breaking down the Terran defenses. And that's why Maru is very reluctant to move out, even though medevacs could be quite a threat. If he leaves too little back at home, it will be incredibly easy for Serral to just run him over. Looks like Serral's intending on doing that anyways. An Ultraless Cavern is on the way. Adrenal glands as well. Serral is already at Hive Tech. Viper in production. 69 workers apiece. A nice macro game so far, but they're continuing to progress the economy, the tech, and a unique sort of setup that I haven't really seen almost ever. Was Serral going for the Roach pressure, pull him back into the Hive Rush, and Maru with the greedy mass barracks play. Okay, well that one's a little more standard. Just making a few little moves to try to keep Serral at bay. Overlord speed, everything filling in. Serral, I mean, getting 5 bases without really taking any damage. A slight delay on his 4th, but overall, about as good as you can get at this stage of the game. He's already got 5 Overlords on the way. Dropper Lords, rather. He has a lot more than 5 Overlords. Looking for alternative options for attacking into a more porcupine Terran. Maru not fully turtled up. He's still putting himself out there and trying to bite off whatever chunks of Zerg he can get, and a Widowmine takes a more than fair share. Fungal catches a lot of the Marines, though, on the ground. Only a few of them able to survive. The Widowmine returns some fire, but many of the Marines are taken out. Serral's maxed out. 3 Ultras in production. A Ghost Academy is on the way for Maru. He's about to finish the 2-2 upgrades, but the drops are loaded up, and Serral is going to try to divide and ideally conquer. He's got some roaches mixed in there. I think we'll see him starting to trade out some of the roaches from the composition, as they are just not supply efficient at this stage. Still having a few Ravagers is always good to snipe off siege tanks and Widowmines and maybe eventually Liberators. But the roaches themselves are mediocre at best. The drops are loaded up. Serral setting his sights on the base down the center. Maru is somewhat aware of it. In fact, Maru has spotted the Dropper Lords. He moves his drops to intercept. And everybody's loaded up with not really anywhere to go at the moment. I mean, so there is no anti-air. 2 Vikings are now in production, but otherwise no real anti-air on the field. So gonna think about breaking down the center. And with the Vipers, he might be able to do so. Infestors could throw a fungal, hits it on the left side. EMP returns, but they're still enough for one more. The Ravagers, I think the Liberators are sieged up, or he might be able to get a double kill on them. Throws up the corrosive biles. They come down on one. Planetary holds, and Maru drives the Zerg back. Serral with a bit of a disjointed attack. And Maru able to pick it apart. You have to commit. With Liberators and Bio and Widow Mines going off, Serral with a somewhat uncharacteristic back and forth there. Not taking out any real key parts of the composition. We see a single siege tank, a single Liberator. Maru destroyed well over twice the resources, including 2 Infestors and 3 Ultralists. Those are not cheap. Well, there's still the Dropper Lords over to the right side. Vikings patrolling, looking to pillage some Overlords, but only finding the Roaches and Banelings ready to defend. Maru with 5 more command centers on the way. More CCs than a poorly formatted corporate email chain here. And, well, with the enough orbital commands to have map hacks with extra steps, enough orbital commands to replace SCVs with automation, enough orbital commands to make it difficult for the Zerg to move into any location without having to squeeze through an alleyway. Does he have command over this game, though? No, not exactly. Serral with plenty of bases. We got 6 going on 8 so far, trying for the 4 corners bingo strategy. And taking even one of these corners and holding Maru off the other is critical for denying the economy in the later game. Medevacs will be able to dodge for now. Meanwhile, the Vikings still looking for any targets. Does Serral have a Spire? Indeed. I could have figured that out with the flyer attack, level 1, in production. But second best time is now. Currently 7 orbital commands. Still a couple more command centers on the way. Ghost Cloak in production. Tactical Nidus to reinforce. I love the efficiency of the creep spread. You can really see it on the minimap. How he's not overlapping too much because he still hasn't had that many queens throughout the match. He's built 5 in total and lost only 1. Never forget. Maru. Here's the Nidus, but I think he realizes you could actually hear with your ears the direction the Nidus is in. And since it was so far away, and he has sensor towers covering the entire right flank, oh, nuclear missile, high-sec auto-tracking, building armor on the way. Maru is going nuclear in the late game. And really just trying to weather the storm of Zerg that's rolling through. No Infestors, nothing to hold him down here, and while that's an intimidating amount of Zerg, it's not enough to break through efficiently. A bit of bio off to the right side, some Marines, Marauders, and Mines. The M&M will try to grind out some extra space as Serral is consuming the map. 5 Ghosts in production. Ghost Command Centers and Liberators are Maru's late game. It might seem a bit unwieldy, but the most effective units, and yes, I'm including orbital commands, anything that gives you vision of an entire screen while also giving you detection, I think counts as an absolute unit, despite not costing supply. We'll see if Serral decides to partake in that mass overseer style. Meanwhile, a Nidus at the very back. Maru clearly noticed it, scrambling back to defend. He's suffering from success a bit. He's been at 200 supply, just like Serral, for quite a while now, as both these players, the best late-game players in the game. I don't think it's really any competition. Both of them more than willing and capable of playing to the very last mineral and gas. And not because they threw everything away, but because they've used it so wisely. We'll see which of them ages better. So far, Serral has lost 4,000 more resources, but it's only 14,000 in total, which is remarkably low. And that's why I remarked on it. Oh, we've got the Brood War switch. StarCraft 2 kind of, some might say parodying. Others might say taking inspiration. It really depends on how old you are, Grandpa. But the mass mech Terran in the late game, and if you just replace ghosts or science vessels with ghosts, it's the exact same style of Marines and Marauders. Flesh is weak and malleable. Mech Terran great. No, Grandpa. No. But mass factory, siege tanks, Hellbats with upgrades, Thors potentially, nuclear launches. That one's just kind of thrown in there. But Launches a nuke in Serral. Looking. Did he find it? Oh. He found it, I think, right when it was launched. And then, well, you still got 15 seconds or so to mine, so... The nuke eventually lands. The fake medevac scouting. A strategy, finding a, another reprise. A single ultra, just staring him down. The turret count is skyrocketing, like the turrets intend to do themselves. And everything is locked out. The orbitals, just a wall of them on the map. 10 orbital commands and counting. Another nuclear missile on the way. There's no the queens are scrambling around the map to inject. Another Nidus. If just one of them gets through, but I feel like this is, especially starting things off, a gesture of respect from both sides. Neither player has committed to, I guess, Serral down the center. That was the closest we had to a full-on engagement. But so far, they've been flirting with the idea, but no one's gone all the way yet. We'll see. Maru unleashes a volley of scans, because when you have 10 orbital commands, you have them on hand. But the ultras from the Nidus, Maru scan said there's no units here, but he failed to consider the Nidus. Though I feel like he's kind of trading out the Marines and Marauders for something a bit more stable. 3 siege tanks at a time, +2 mech weapons and +3 plating, which works for both ground and air. Serral has 15,000 minerals. Maru just whips out a nuclear missile and maybe one of them will land. 5,000 gas in the bank for both sides. Looks like he'll just let the nuke go, but the banelings are rolling through. A few snipes. Ultras will be able to retreat in time. Meanwhile, there is a full energy Viper. Some snipes lined up. Boost back the medevacs. A severe lack of fusion core out of Maru. He has pretty much everything you could ever dream of, but apparently he never dreamed of a fusion core. And the lack of advanced ballistics and Caduceus reactor will... It's not a small thing. The Ultras just kind of chew it apart. A couple planetaries to the north. And it's not so much about what you have, it's about where it is now. As the chess match begins. Sure, you take out a planetary, it'll immediately be replaced by like one of 12 other command centers. Sorry, like 15 other command centers, but... Changelings scattered throughout, distracting me on the minimap. 19 banelings, Serral, with a surgical jackhammer strategy. Sounds painful, but, you know, blunt trauma is sometimes the least. Maru unleashes not 1, not 2, but 6 scans. Just keeping tabs on gestures wildly at the entire map. The fusion core is finally on the way, though I don't think battle cruisers are going to be the choice. It is those incredibly potent upgrades still that are so important. The map now almost cloven in twain. As Maru trying to hold on to the 12 o'clock base, he's been able to carve out, drop some mule hammer. And the income, if you look at the y-axis, has been surprisingly even throughout this. But Serral, knocking out that base, carved out quite a lead. I feel like the mules will be cutting into that somewhat dramatically. Very optimistic. That command center is almost in the right location to mine, but really, when the banks are larger than the GDP of some countries, I don't know if you can worry too much about your command center being 1 or 2 pixels off. Maru at 10,000 minerals and 6,000 gas. Serral at 18,000 minerals. That is ludicrous. 1% of the players have 99% of the minerals, and both of them in this game. Ultras, banelings rolling through, zoning out the ghosts. No infestors with this, but he's dismantling the liberators, chopping up the siege tanks. And Maru is forced to retreat yet again. This is like a theory. This is more theory crafting than star crafting right now. Like, what happens if you have the perfectly ideal armies? He's chewing... His roaches refuse to die, so he's killing them himself. The Nidus in the main. For once, it went unscouted. And Serral wasn't expecting it. He's like, oh, throw some legs in there. Why not? And getting anything to pull Maru out of position. Though Maru, he's still adding in a few Marines and Marauders. That is the main weakness of a more mechanically inclined unit composition. Is a simple lack of mobility. The scans. 12 orbital commands. The Ravagers. Gonna be popped like overripe tomatoes. The Lings and Ultras are angling for the bottom right corner. Serral with 85 drones throughout all this. He has 20,000! 20,000 minerals! Now, we could talk about all this, but have we considered that the minerals just hit 20,000? All right, with an economy this good, we don't have to worry about the ghosts. We don't have to worry about the siege tanks. The minerals hit 20,000. So, why don't we talk about that more often? But there's a planetary, a zoning planetary, getting dangerously close to actually killing the Ultras, and he backs off. The planetary may burn. And Maru with just 9,000 minerals. All right. Zerglings will rip apart the last pieces of the planetary. But Maru strikes down the center towards the heart of the swarm. A Venn diagram of freedom will liberate anything that gets nearby, but unfortunately, the Banelings are already rolling through. Are there any Vipers remaining? No. Did he get Microbial Shroud? No. Another Nidus in the main. A Changeling slipped through. But Maru has had enough. For better or worse, he's committing. The Nidus, he's popping out the Zerglings. Might even be able to take out the Marauder. And the trickle becomes a flood. Even, why are there drones in that? Drone rush! The Predator drones hit the field. The Nidus network itself is kind of vulnerable. Maru actually does have to come. This is starting to get uncomfortable. He pops the drones back in. We'll end up long distance money. He's targeting the Nidus network, which is one way to deal with your network connectivity issues, but the Fungal catches the Medivacs, will knock them down, but there's not much left for them to even heal. The Ghosts lining up their shots, and finally the Nidus will be dislodged. But the Nidus network itself, 114 Zerglings in production. Another wave. As Serral, he still has larva in the bank. He only has one macro hatch. The efficiency is redonkulous. The Ultra's badly bruised, but helping to cut through. And with the Zerglings, he might be able to clear the field. Serral has now lost 10,000 more resources, but he has mined 11,000 more. They mined almost exactly the same amount of Vespene gas, 22.5 thousand apiece, but 65 to 55k minerals. Serral has had the income lead, but he's needed it. The drones retreat into the Nidus. What a game. This is not like an action-packed brawl. This is like a wrestling match where they're grappling each other and, you know, other exciting things that I don't need to expand upon. You can check out my Dronely fans for more. But 2 starports on the way. Maru at 5 factories, 3 starports. Still plenty of orbital commands. Still 12. 6,000 to 13,000 minerals. Though Maru actually has more gas in the bank, which could very well become relevant. Because while this battle may be fought with Ghosts and Ultras, and a ridiculous amount of Banelings that are bullying the Ultras into a corner, I don't know what's going on there. Anyways, weird hazing ritual. The next battle may very well be fought with Hellbats and Zerglings, and only one of those, I think, will survive. That is the thing. If we get to the supreme extreme late game, Marines and Hellbats far outstrip Zerglings and Queens. So Zerg really somewhat desperately needs gas in the late game. Whereas Terran it's still incredibly important, but not quite as critical. So, Maru again. Now, we're talking about it like, well, Serral far down. 40% drop in his stonks price from the 20,000 minerals he had in the bank. He's liquidized a whole bunch of those minerals and punched it into a whole bunch of ultras and zerglings. But only losing 540 zerglings seems kind of obscenely low for this stage of the game. Well, a single zergling will help to take out some of the siege tanks, and Maru will trade and take the top left. Serral has retaken the bottom right, as the base trades will slowly continue, but not in the normal fashion, but instead as they rotate around the map like the moon around the earth, if you believe in that. Siege tanks, Hellbats, the 167 army supply for Maru. And draw the fire and fury. Serral has not found an easy way to deal with it. He's got 15 ghosts, 23 Hellbats, a smattering of siege tanks, and a picket line of liberators. But the sheer amount of banelings is just rolling through towards the ghosts. And there's not quite enough of them to deal with it. Retreats once he has a planetary. Makes it a little easier. A few zerglings got in to nibble on the infrastructure. Maru's still with a dozen orbital commands. His mineral bank, somehow a single infestor, has snuck by the entire checkout aisle of scans. Oh my. And it only takes one! But in this case, it might take more as... Well, some of the ghosts are taken out. He didn't quite nail the most perfect location for the fungal, but close enough. Ends up catching 6 of the ghosts. This battle has lasted 6 minutes. So the battle counts as, I believe, 30... If there's at least 1 unit dying or resources lost within 30 seconds. So there's been no lull in the action until, I think, it just... No, I was looking at that! The battle's so extensive that I couldn't read it all in time, but Maru might be marginally more cost-effective. But the margins are too thin. He's running out of minerals. With only 3,000 in the bank, but here comes Serral. The infestors behind, the EMPs aren't there. The liberators are unable to contest. The corruptors are knocking him down. The ultras find an angle. And while the liberators have taken out many of them, the ghosts will finish off the rest. Maru can't rebuild. Serral has slowly but surely squeezed the minerals and gas out of him. The cheese grater Zerg, the sandpaper Zerg, just scraping away your bank. And Serral still has 5,000 for... The scan hits one of the infestors. But Maru is running out of mineral patches. He has 28 SCVs, but with the amount of mules he can drop, even with this many scans, he should still have half a dozen mules at a time. Maru obviously dropped a handful a while back, but the mineral patches are drawing thin. Here comes Serral across the board. The Ultras working their way through the tanks. More Zerglings from the north. There aren't that many ghosts behind this. The Corruptors are knocking down everything in the sky, and the ghosts aren't enough to stop the Ultras. More Liberators on the way. A fungal catches a few. Melted by the Banelings. And Serral? 190 versus 109 supply. Maru may not die with a bang, but with a whimper of, "Please, sir, may I have some more minerals?" And Serral looks down, says no. the last... Well, Maru still has 100 army supply, but at no point... The Ultras just run right past the Liberation Zones. The Zerglings surround. The Corruptors knock down the Liberators. And I think after over 30 minutes, game number 1 will go to Serral. GG from Maru. And 61 to 69,000 resources lost. The surgical battering ram of Serral just smacking Maru back into his place every single time he tried to pop out. Wow. And 15 out of 16 series might be increased at this rate, as Serral just inevitable. There's not. It wasn't really flashy. It didn't have those big back and forth fights that many of the times we're used to seeing, even in Terran versus Zerg. We are watching, somewhat ironically, Grandmasters. Obviously, they're Grandmaster. Duh. But, duh. Top tier commentary. Thank you. Like and subscribe. But, Grandmaster, somehow, whatever tier is above that. World class. The only 2 players in the world, especially the ones playing today, I think could be considered the greatest of all time. In my opinion, Serral's earned it, and it would take a whole lot to dislodge it, but Maru has embarrassed everyone, pretty much, in every matchup. Terran, Zerg, and Protoss. He doesn't discriminate. His late game is obscenely effective in an entirely different way from his French counterpart Clem, who he defeated to get here. If you're wondering where Clem went, Clem played Protoss against Maru and came close, but did not succeed. Another incredible match you should watch, but I'll say wait until the end of this one. It wasn't one-sided. But Serral's omnipotent Zerg. And we saw such an interesting start, too. With Serral going for the creep highway into a much more smoothly transitioning from a potential Roach Queen all-in all the way into the extreme late game. Like the economic theory late game, where if you mine 20,000, if you have 20,000 minerals in the bank, I don't think I've ever seen 20,000 minerals in the bank in a professional game. And if I did, it was probably these 2, but I've seen 10. 10 happens not commonly, but for reference, a fully mining base, we're ignoring mules because they break everything, is between 15 and 2,000 minerals of a minute, in a minute. It depends, you can go up to 24 workers, but let's just say like 18, I say 1,000? 1,500 and 2,000 minerals a minute. Let's say 1,800 is about the average. Workers very roughly mine 50 to 60 a minute. So, in order to have 20,000 minerals in the bank, that means 5-6 bases fully mining, not spending, for at least a couple minutes. And then some. But they were fighting for minutes at a time. Just honestly kind of more of a Brood War-esque feel, where we're going to have smaller engagements on different strategic parts of the map without ever really committing to a potentially game-ending one. Maru only when it became clear. Now, neither of them, it's so important to note, they can't tell exactly how many minerals and how much gas their opponent has. You can draw some conclusions. You can take some educated guesses. You can know how many bases you mined and how many they were allowed to, but you can't know the exact number. And the difference between 3,000 and 13,000 in the bank is a big deal. All right, most armies in the late game cost between 6,000 and 8,000 minerals. We're talking maxed out. Between 6,000 and 8,000 minerals, and between 3,000 and 7,000 gas. You might be like, that's kind of a wide range. Yes, because that's the real kicker. Like, a full Ghost Liberator army is going to be about 6,000, 7,000 gas. Whereas just Marines and Hellbats with a few tanks and medevacs, well, that's about 3K. All right. right? You gotta understand. It's about the value, not just the quantity. Same for Zerg with roaches versus Infestor Broodlord. Or mass banelings versus a whole bunch of Zerglings. The banelings are the way to increase your power without also increasing your supply. Maru's decided that this is where we build third command centers now. And... yeah, he has Marine. Okay. The reactored. Maru very intentionally, not a huge, like, intellectual coup, but keeping his barracks in his factory, or his barracks in his starport, part of the Destiny Cloudfish build. The 1-1-1, the barracks factory starport opener, can go any sort of direction. Oh, and the Zergling does not get in, but it sees 2 gases on the low ground. And Serral may interpret that wrong. Okay. He's gonna think this is mech. But he's building a Bane Nest. Well, a Bane Nest kind of comes by default with the lair because Baneling speed is so good. Maru has gone mech on a regular basis lately. Like, it's not a rarity. It's very strong. He's not here. He's going double NG Bay. That's what the gas is for. Serral is not building a Roach Warren. And hey, this is... Susan, you gonna say it? Fine. This is restricted lair space. Now you're gonna go fly and catch him? No, you know, Brenda. That hurts. It hurts me too. It's how I cope. Well, you think you can just hurt other people, and that's like a fair assessment? You can be hurtful to others and use that as a coping mechanism, as a shield. Yeah, I kinda, yeah. Feels bad when you put it that way. Well, maybe ruminate on that a little bit. All right, maybe next time the Hatchery Owners Association meeting, you stop being such a total I'm gonna get demonetized again. Sorry. Spire is on the way. For Serral, blacked out for a sec. Mutas. So not only was my assessment of suspecting mech, I think, wrong, but entirely so. While a Spire can be very useful against mech, it is a risky endeavor. Mutalisks are a muta risk of their own against the Marines. So, it doesn't rely entirely on surprise, though it certainly helps. Did the Banshee get anywhere close to spotting it? Absolutely not. But Maru built just the one Banshee and has gone directly for the upgrades. That was his first priority. Essentially, the moment after getting the cursory early 1-1-1. So that means he's already starting +2 attack. By the time the mutas are even on the field. By the time Serral finishes his evolution chamber. This upgrade advantage is stark. I'm not talking about Winter or Winterfell right now, but the mutas are quite a threat. But Marines, arguably more so. The mutas are actually flapping back to help defend. Does Serral not feel confident he can break this? If he crushes this attack, obviously that's helpful, but the Queens getting dangerously close. A few transfuses come through, the mutas are spotted, but the best defense against mutas is a good offense, and right now Maru, great target fire on the Banes, trying to find more, and the mutas are chasing him down. And Serral a bit disjointed. He actually picked up the Marines, drops them back out, the Hellions body blocking, and Serral with some uncharacteristic indecision. The mutas could have gone across the map and maybe gotten some damage done, but Maru, he just started his missile turrets, just now acknowledging the mutas could come across. But Serral's using them to cut off the reinforcements. Then Maru steps up to the plate and tries to burn through the Queens, but many more of them to contest. The Marines are fighting at the back. The mutas are just getting what they can. Unfortunately, what they can get is mediocre. Overall, almost dead even on the trades. Thor is in production, though. Already taking these mutas very seriously. It's very hard. You can't just go mutas and then swerve out. They are a huge commitment. The Spire, the most expensive tech building on layer tech. The Muta's the most expensive layer tech. Unless you can count like infestors, but like I get out of basic units, you're going to build 20 of potentially. So it does stall out a lot of your other potential options. That's what I came up with. All right, I thought I was going to say something profound after a dramatic pause. Options. Now we're doing another dramatic pause because I forgot what I was talking about. But moving on. Changeling. Wow! Just the idea of those medevacs. He just cancels the hatch preemptively. Maru sends a few Marines just to make sure it stays that way. The mutas are flapping across. And most importantly here, Serral does not have an infestation pit. He does not have access potentially to hive tech. He is committed to the mutas, which a dangerous game. A muta risk. Wow, Maru even puts his Thor in high impact mode. Wait, no he doesn't. So the only time the explosive like AoE payload is usually useful is against the mutas. But not useful enough as the magic box spreads out the mutas with the stop command usually. And the Zerglings are already into the natural, working into the main. Might be able to target the missile turret. The mutas flap by. And Maru gets caught far out of position. Serral just keeps pre-canceling bases before the medevacs and Marines can show up. 3-3 is now on the way. I gotta come back over and over to the upgrades. Because while Maru is taking superficial damage, 'tis but a flesh wound. Losing a few SCVs here and there, a missile turret, a refinery. That is not a game-ending or critical bit of damage. And Serral has 17, now 20 mutas, 40 supply, 2,000 gas committed to the mutalisks. And he hasn't found much to show for it yet, but sniping off a starport would be quite a blow. Meanwhile, the Lings and Banes trying to chase down the army on the field. There's a lot of Banelings underneath, but he's off a creep. The starport is actually taken out by the mutas. A surprising pickoff, but a welcome one. And there's the infestation pit. Unfortunately for Serral, by the time he can start a hive, Maru will already have 3-3. So that means maximum upgrades. The Widow Vines scattered throughout the field like explosive breadcrumbs. I guess mines. But trailing everything. Doesn't have Overlord speed. Might rectify that momentarily. 2-2's about to complete for Serral. Drawing even on the upgrades count for a small amount of time, but one he could easily take advantage of. Maru is pretty far out on the field, in quite a choke point. The Banelings rolling through. Couple more Widowmons working their way up. Serral with mutas as part of the main army, and mutas to the north. Controlling effectively 2 different muta groups, and a single missile turret is barely a suggestion to leave, let alone one that forces Serral away. And he's going to take out half a dozen SCVs, and Maru has to scramble back into the main. Underestimated the commitment, but here comes Maru, right down the center. 3-3 upgrades closing in. The mass Banelings, and even more on the way. The Marines have been pulled back. Missile turrets taken out. +3 weapons completed. Banelings rolling through. Thor is here and holds the line, zoning the mutas out and absorbing a lot of the Baneling hits. The mutas take out some more missile turrets. +2 flyer attack is about to complete, but Serral, his hatchery down the center, is deconstructed rapidly and unscheduled. Maru maintains the momentum with the Marines, Marauders, Mines, the medevacs. Mind you, mutas making many moves. Meandering, meticulous. But the moment for mutas is quickly, the age of the muta is ending. And the age of man, or at least a bunch of dudes with drugs and guns, has come into the forefront. The muta's continuing to drag Maru back, but it's the army supply and the upgrades. Though, if he can never commit it on the field, that's still so much. 53 Banelings and counting. For Serral, he takes out the hatchery on the left side, but a lot of the Lings and Banes will force him to pay for it. can Maru afford? He's actually got more money in the bank. A little awkward, as Serral has picked off some of the production. Several of the add-ons in the main. The barracks are mostly outside of the base now in a more defensible location, as the mutas have turned the tables on that. The hive is about to complete 5 more mutas on the way. And a whole bunch of SCVs in the main base. And Maru is completely off the map. He decides it's enough. All right, I'm going forward, because at this rate, there's almost no home to go back to. A bunch of Marines are stimming to drive the mutas away, but Maru sends at least half of his army down the center. Most of the medevacs. A couple Thors. And the Marauders left out in front as tribute, but the Banelings roll right by. The move command, very good. The mutas will take out one of the Thors. More of the mutas. No! He looked the wrong way! The Thor didn't get a second volley, which is huge, as Serral likely would have lost about half his mutas there. Many of them in the red, but they will heal rather quickly. Another wave of Banelings. Mutas down the center, try to target down some of the medevacs, but he goes off creep. And the Banelings can't find the connections. But a planetary fortress will be chipped away. The Mutalisk flock is a little bit too much, and the Marines weren't able to deal with it. Serral loses the hatchery down the center, but he has 2 more. 1 to the bottom left and 1 at the 3 o'clock. Mutas will flap away after slapping down the planetary. And the income lead has gone towards Serral once again for the overwhelming majority of the last 10 minutes. And as the upgrades start to draw closer to even, the prospects of just crushing the army and winning the game outright are continuing to grow. +3 Carapace is on the way. Did he get adrenal glands? No. Serral with 1,500 gas in the bank, but he's stretched incredibly thin, microing the mutas and trying to manage the defense and anything else simultaneously. But another starport will be sniped off by the Mutalists. Adrenal glands has begun. Will we see any infestors added into the composition, as this current mineral spread is kind of begging for it? Serral does not want to give up yet another base. He lost the 3 o'clock, as Maru just keeps rotating around. His army is too strong to fight head-on, and the mutas are not a direct fighting unit the majority of the time. The Lings... Oh no. He exhausted most of his Banelings on the Marauders. They misguided A-click, and that's all it takes. He lost a whole bunch of Banes. Now, they don't show up in the units lost because they attacked, which is a terrible sign for Serral. Why? Because when a Baneling dies, it shows up in unit lost. It still explodes, but when it attacks, that means it succeeded, and it wasn't lost. So the fact that Serral did not have any Banelings lost here, and only has, well, 55 in total, despite clearly losing much more than that, that means there were some mistakes made. I mean, not necessarily, but in that last fight, about 20 Banelings hit the Marauders instead of what they needed. And now Maru has a 30 supply lead. The quest has rested on the edge of a knife for all this time. Unfortunately, Serral's has been blunted. The mutas and Banes and no, Brendan! I'm walking as fast as I can! No, my legs! Ah! Never forget. Who was she? The mutas coming back, trying to pick off some missile turrets, but Widow Mines, Banelings roll in to the heart of the Terran army, but the Marines are able to evade the vast majority of the damage. Again, the hatchery gonna be knocked down. 8 hatcheries dead. How many command centers? Just the 1. A few scattered units, a whole bunch of missile turrets, and between the SCVs and the army on the field, Maru's supply dips, but the mutas are struggling. There's one more Widowmine. Does he notice? Muta's taking a hit across the bow. This hatchery, Serral does not have another hatch. He just started one down the center. This will be his income lead gone. He's maintained, and the only way to play this is having an income lead. Mutas, Lings, and Banes are reliant on overwhelming with quantity. And if you can no longer do that... 40 SCVs. Serral, Maru saves them with the command center. Maru is critically low on workers. He only has 3 orbital commands. You know what could be incredibly useful right now is Baneling Mines. 39 mutas lost. 200 Marines. But Serral is down 40 army supply. The mutas have found a lot of lopsided fights. But if they ever get into a fair one, they very likely will not survive it. How many Thors? Just one? Lings and Banes? No Lings. It's all just Banelings here. A couple mutas. The Queen's trying to help. Serral cannot afford to lose another base. And Maru does not care about his problems and will create more of them. The muta's cutting off reinforcements, but the standing army is already... feel like once Maru got to 3-3 and Serral was unable to really take a decisive fight, he's been relying on Maru making a critical mistake, but Maru has never offered up enough of his army for Serral to just crush with the Banelings. He's done a good job of splitting his army into viable, yet expendable groups. And Serral's been bleeding out for a while. The death throes of the mutas continue. But a few Marines, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 more mutas picked off. 9 hatcheries. And I feel like 3 or 4 hatcheries were canceled before finishing. So we're well into the double digits of hatcheries delayed or destroyed. And Maru's closing in. He's maxed out. The Lings and Banes will try to fix that. The Muta's over the top. They have +2-1. Quite good. Reinforcements cut off by the Marauders. The Muta count is at 24, and that's pretty much all he has. We haven't seen a single infester. It actually feels like a... Oh, no. They have mines again, Brenda. What do you think, Susan? I try not to. It's easier that way. The final moments, punctuated in a most dramatic way, but... So what happened? Serral... Oh, the army showed up, and Serral showed himself out. He has nothing to deal with this. The mutas, but the Marines are back, and Serral just... He's out of options. And Maru's on the board. Quite a brutal game. This one... Back and forth, constantly bleeding out units on either side for almost the entirety of the game after such a technical fencing match in game 1. I'm starting to think these two are pretty good. Serral tried the mutas. Pretty good map for it, I think, but... I don't know if he predicted Serral's... or Maru's double upgrades. The upgrades hitting so strongly before the mutas could do anything. Maru was working on 2-2 upgrades before Serral finished his Evo chambers. That means Serral was always working against the clock, with his units just simply being significantly less cost effective. I guess we're changing colors each game here. So far, the blue team has won every game so far. Now, very likely the players are not actually. They're just using their in-game colors, but at least it's not a mirror matchup, thankfully. Celestial Enclave. Probably our spiciest map of the pool. With the budget base in the back pocket with the worker-only path. Very much could factor in. Yeah. These two. Interesting that Serral made no attempt to kind of swerve out of the mutas. Now, it seems like you're multitasking, Serral's multitasking. Obviously, any 10 of us would be stressed, but mutas, you literally can't look away ever. You have to. Very simply, at some point, you have to not be staring at the mutas. And it seems like every time that happens, even though it's not true, that's when the Marines show up or you happen to fly over 2-3 random Widow Mines. And we saw that several times. That combined with the upgrade advantage for Maru means that I think we actually found a point where Serral was stressed to the limit, to the breaking point. And that was simply it. Like maybe also adding in infestors or trying to switch to lurkers or something would be the ideal theoretical play. But try doing that while also constantly defending 2 attacks and also microing mutas on the... Oh, no! Charlotte! Insubordinate! Suzanne! The Reaper's here! Did he murder a drone? He murdered a drone! That is an inauspicious start for the finisher. Losing a drone to the first Reaper is certainly not ideal. Does the Reaper get close enough? You can't actually see the base at the back. And interestingly, Serral takes this as his third. A lot of Zerg players will just try to take the outer third. It's like, well, fine. Now do it the old-fashioned way. Just gets in and spots it. Another drone on the way. Oh. He didn't have enough money, I think, at that last second. 2 drones and a full scout? Oh, this is a series of unfortunate events. That's quite a kerfuffle now. That is not supposed to happen. One drone, maybe. It happens. All right. 2? No. That is... It's not good. Reaper still alive, which means he could use it to potentially bounce the queens out of the way. Though there is a ramp to the high ground. We got a Roach Warren for Serral, quite conspicuous. And the Reaper gets in. It will spot the Roach Warren. Will he look for a lair? Serral does not have Zergling speed. He delayed his gas to get these hatcheries out. Wow, Maru. Maru, no respect. 4th command center on location. Before Serral's 4th. He's gonna get away with it. I think he did he did this as soon as he spotted the 3rd, knowing that there wouldn't be ling speed. And I mean, what's stopping him? There's nothing. There's no one. Triple racks. He's going to have so much economy to just go mass Marines. Serral is not going for a Roach all-in. He might go for a Roach timing, but even if he hits when Roach speed does, Maru will have 1-1 and medevacs as well as plenty of production. So... Roach speed begins. +1 Carapace covers all Zerg units. At least ground units, to be clear, obviously. So let's 68 drones to Maru's 49 SCVs. But Maru does have 3 orbital commands, and he's dropping mules. So the income lead should be somewhat undercut by that. Just the intent of the orbitals. Serral's building 6 overlords at a time, which usually means a big swell of units behind. 67 drones. Full 3-base saturation. That's usually the cutoff point. It's almost exactly 66 if you're going to go for a timing. It's about as good of an economy as you can get in the early game without any diminishing returns. Though some of those returns going to diminish as Maru comes in and snipes off a few drones. A whole bunch of roaches. He's just gonna try to batter things down. Did he get Overlord speed? No. The Overseer glides into the main base. Gonna spot the most typical Terran setup. Does he see? He has not seen the 3 racks, or 5 racks rather, on the low ground. Maru has been decentralized with his production, and honestly, it's kind of working out for him. He could go through the rocks! I don't think I've seen quite exactly this. Maru, because of those racks, may have a moment to react. No, he's not. He's not realizing it yet. There, the alarm bells are going off, but Serral has broken through. He's already inside the base, cutting off the production, and Maru desperate to defend. A single siege tank. A whole bunch of Marines and Marauders. They do have 1-1 upgrades done. If he could just take out that tank. The barracks are quite a bulwark against all of this. He's just going to break them down. 11 SCVs dead. He's retreating back with the racks, trying to get close enough. Whips out the corrosive bile, knocks out the siege tank. More, wow, that's a lot of Marines and Marauders. A whole lot coming off the line. Loses 16 SCVs, more rallying out from the back base. But Maru is not willing to retreat. He's pushing forward. The Marauders at the back. He sacrificed 18 SCVs in order to hold the Zerg. But he's still only down. Like, he's 67 to 65. He's been pumping out SCVs like army units, and why not? This attack, that single siege tank, and the setup of the barracks. I thought it was just in a convenient spot, but there might be a method to the madness. That was a perfect setup to funnel the Zerg, and whoa! He had the high ground. And Maru just puts Serral back down. I didn't expect it to just end. Serral just, he knows if he wasn't able to crush Maru with clearly a massive supply lead, a deficit. Well, that was a little more decisive, but Maru with an uncomfortably strong hold will put him in the lead. That was shocking almost how well he held that. His 4 CCs kicking in just in time. I was surprised, which is not exactly a huge accomplishment, but Serral just almost looked desperate. It was a well-timed attack, nearly maxed out. Plenty of roaches and ravagers. On paper, it should be enough to just bash through and at least get critical damage done. I don't even know. I think Serral came around with the roaches and spotted that Maru already had the 4th base. And that's why he felt so inclined to just tap out. Because Maru has as many bases with better upgrades and a better army. It's going to be hard to come back from that. Jimmy, give him his point. Yes, Maru. Serral has played the Roach timing card now twice. Once to significant success and once to very much not. I'd be kind of surprised to see it again. The mutas. So far, we haven't seen just a straight-up macro out to Hydraling Bane. I would call Hydraling Bane the default in the matchup. Then with Lurkers later on. And if we keep going, things like Broodlords, but we'll see. White Rabbit is map number 4. Gas and pool for Serral. Not going to try any super quick third. Still probably will try to sneak a drone out. The little mind games of SCV scout and third base and when you get your queen and how many lings you build in order to nibble at the Reaper, is a critical yet mundane part of Terran versus Zerg. And it all starts there. That game started with a Reaper getting 2 kills and a full scout. That, both economically and emotionally devastating. It's like a gotcha game. If you know, you know. This video brought to you by our sponsors. You. Thank you for watching. Like and subscribe. Maru not even bothering to hide the command center. Just sticking it right out there in the front of everything. The Overlord looking at it. Feeling like its job is either too easy or uncomfortably complicated. Like most people. Overlords are people too. Moving on. Starport is on the way. But that means nothing. Maru has done such a great job of masking his intents, even though every time it's just ended up being a bunch of Marines and Marauders and Medevacs. The path that he's taken to get there has been different each time. He's kept Serral off guard and off balance. Banshee to start. Deja vu. We've just been in this place before. The Zergling gets in. Will he start Interference Matrix to fake the cloak? Will this be a reprise of, I believe, Game 2? Tech Lab on the racks. Couple more Hellions in production. Still just looking like the one Banshee. Which is very interesting. We see Terrans love their Banshees, by and large. Especially players like Clem, who are constantly getting damage. It's something to do. Alright, you might be like, well, just managing the build is hard. But for players like Clem, feels like you always got to have something. It's just like a nervous tick. I micro my Banshee and kill 3 more drones. Double engineering bay is on the way. Yet again, Maru. Gonna be going for the stim pack, the upgrades, the Marines, the Marauders, the Medevacs, and we'll see what he fills in past that. Serral with not a slow lair. Not the quickest, but certainly not delaying it. Not for upgrades, not for any other tech. Getting the Spore Crawlers, acknowledging that Banshee Cloak could be dangerous, just Banshees in general, but not so early that he's super concerned. The fact he's not going for an Evolution Chamber, or 2, or a Baneling Nest. Well, there's a lot of things you can do. Is he gonna try the Mutas again? That would be wild. He didn't even get a Bane Nest, though. What is this? He's building 2 Overseers. Hydras. Mass Hydras. We've seen this from Serral before. Like, we're talking not like 5, not 10, like 25 Hydralisks. He's getting the Evo Chambers now, but 61 drones and counting. Maru has landed his 3rd. He's sitting on 50 SCVs, and that number's just going to keep going up dramatically. Banshee, more for a scout, more like a cameraman than a damaging unit, but we'll see the 4th hatchery in production. Maru, racks 4 and 5 together as well. Now, he hasn't yet seen the Hydra Den, nor the Hydras themselves. We got the 1-1 upgrades with ranged attack, very importantly for so. Baneling Nest, getting Hydra range, which is indicative of defense. Usually you go for the speed upgrade in order to have any speed off creep. If that was a veiled criticism of me, I won't acknowledge it and I won't respond to it. Okay, Lucio. Did he? Yeah, he finishes up the Hydra range. Hydra speed is on the way now. Already a dozen Hydras. once you get well into the double digits, it is enough to fight on their own, at least without too many siege tanks. Unfortunately, Maru has his tanks already jammed into a location on the high ground. There's some overseers with the army, so at least he'll be able to spot it. But getting the Lings and Banes over there is going to be quite difficult. Banshee taking some bites out of the hatchery. The Marines will move forward. He drops a mule! Wow, Maru! Wow! I think he did mean to scan, but wow, Maru. Widely considered to be kind of BM. But, well, the Hydras are fighting against the siege tanks. There should be enough. Targets it down. Bit of a painful fight for both sides. The Zerglings got into the natural and decided that's not where they wanted to be. The Queen trying to help out. The Hydra count has dwindled dramatically. A few Hellbats coming up. The Marines behind it. 1-1 upgrades against 0-0. And the Hellbats zoning out. More Hydras, and that should be enough to drive this back, despite the Hellbats burninating across the countryside. Serral holds for now. With quite a supply lead. He has 80 drones, but Maru is not slouching. He's got a 4th command center about to complete, and he's got 77 SCVs, and he's still building 3 at a time. Serral, no infestation pit, though using all of his gas for these Hydras, filling in. Wow, a lot of damage was taken from that Banshee. And a double medevac drop might try to finish it off. Upping out, the Zergling will spot it. Creep is serviceable. Not great, not terrible. Maru's made an active effort to keep it at bay. The double drop. Are there any queens for transfuse? Doesn't look like it for now. The infestation pit begins. +1 melee attack, +2 carapace in production now for Serral, but Maru is much closer to finishing +2 infantry weapons and armor. Would be a key part of the next phase of the game. 4th base landing at the 6 o'clock location. Not going down the center yet, but 2 more command centers on the way as we hurtle towards a much more macro-oriented late game. Serral nearly maxed out. He's got the Hydra count again. 17 Hydras. Hive begins. Lurker Den? Lurker Den? Has not. Interesting. The Hydras and a Spore Crawler in position to zone out the drops, but the Queen has had enough of these Hydras. No! And at that exact moment, Maru doubles back, loses one of the medevacs for his trouble. The other will make it into the main and spot the Hive on the way. A conspicuous lack of Lurker Den for Serral. Not that Lurkers are particularly helpful, but in this exact scenario, Hatchery gets sniped off. Felt kind of inevitable. Marines dropping out. Maru just going back and forth and keeping the Queens as busy as possible. A few Zerglings, but against 2-2 Marines, Maru targets down a Hydra. Gonna take out a few drones. These Marines getting an inordinate amount of damage. The Queen's barely scratching the armor. More drones on the way. So going towards 90. Has 5, soon to be 6 hatcheries as he replaces the 2 o'clock. But Maru has 5 bases. He's been effectively untouched. He's lost a grand total of 3 SCVs, 0 buildings. Serral hasn't lost much more, but it does feel like the majority of the fighting has been on his side of the map. A Knight is down the center. The Lurker Den just started. Not sure if that was an oversight or intentional, but now a long way off. And the army's coming right down the center. Hydras, Lings, and Banes, though, there aren't that many Zerglings behind this, but Serral doesn't want to run the risk. Zerglings looking for a wrap around the tanks. Oh my, look at that spread. I can't believe it's not butter. Meanwhile, the Hatchery taking a lot of damage, but a huge counterattack. A zoning planetary with tanks behind. And Maru looking unbreakable. A wall of depots, a planetary, siege tanks, everything being funneled into the splash damage. And Serral's counterattack is stopped before it can start. But he's still holding down the center. A few more Banelings wasted on the Marauders. Where are the Vipers? When the hatcheries fell, where were the Vipers? When the tanks sieged up, where were the Vipers? when the medevacs were dropping left, right, and center. Where were the Vipers? Finally, they answer, but the hatchery is taken out. The Vipers only have energy for a couple blinding clouds, and the tanks are jammed into every possible corner. Doors and corners. That's what they get you. Adrenal gland's about to complete +2 ranged attack. A big upgrade timing here, especially just a few seconds before Maru completes his +3 infantry weapons and armor. The Marines, the Marauders, knock out a base at the 9 o'clock. Serral a bit optimistic on that one. I don't think he had any intents of it surviving. Building armor is now on the way, filling in after the infantry upgrades. There's not enough Hydras to take out this hatchery quickly, so Serral might be caught in a tough place here if he actually gets cornered. Command center backs off. I don't think killing a command center is worth really any amount of units. Just denying the mining is all he can do. A Nidus to try to hold it down. Lurker range is done. Burrow speed is about to complete. No lurkers on the field or underneath it. The siege tanks. There are 10 siege tanks taking big hits on the banelings. A Nidus holding position. We got more missile turrets to zone out anything trying to come in towards the main. Did Maru just kill his own siege tank, or did Zerglings come with it? I wouldn't be surprised if he decides he wants to... Well, he wouldn't be building siege tanks then destroying them unless he was trying to get some insurance money. +3 ranged attack, +2, +3 carapace, as well as +3 melee. Serral with the triple Evo chamber. Mass Overseer, the Oversight Committee strategy. Wow, Serral going to borrow a page out of the roguelike. Sort of late game. With enough Overseers to constantly have changelings pretty much literally everywhere. Double Spire in production. And here we go again, the banks begin to build. The Widowmine splitting off individual units. Siege tank scans forward. There's only 4 orbital commands for now, but I feel like that's going to be the lowest number for a long time yet. Nuclear missile, +3 mech weapons, +3 carapace just finished for Serral. This time around, it's going to be Hydraling Bane. Another Nidus, a few of the lurkers. Will move through. There's only 1 siege tank here. It'll cut through the wall. This hatchery will be taken down. Maru not committing too many of his forces. The lurkers, siege tank not quite in range of them, and are cutting through the depots. Maru not going to be supply blocked because he has the command centers are his supply at this point. Ghost line up some shots, pop a couple lurkers, and remove the threat for now. 14 Overseers. Serral embracing that mass unit late game. Gonna try to come through the center. A single Viper. Blinding Cloud. Denies some of the siege tanks. Overseers blocking the view of almost everything. Banelings rolling through. There's still enough for one more Blinding Cloud. He pulls back with the Vipers. Quite a cost-effective fight in general for Serral. But lunges forward with the Hydras. Still, over the last 90 seconds, Maru has taken the better end of the trades, but if Serral can mine from both of the contested bases down the relative center, there's an Ultralisk Cavern now on the way, which the Ultras actually ended up working out quite well in game number 1, though they are having a unit almost as large as your mother as a target is clearly a liability in many cases. And Maru has shown that he is less than stingy with the scans, as he drops 3 of them simultaneously, including on his own army, looking for any of those Serral Festers. The strategy that has risen from beneath, unburrowed, and binded Terrans into a losing position. Maru has solved that by simply scanning literally everywhere all the time. And that is not hyperbole. Unfortunately, though, he didn't scan this army coming forward. The Marines will be sacrificed so the Ghosts can escape. EMPs wipe out some of the energy. He tries to line up some snipes. Widowmines don't get any shots off, but not able to get a hold of the Ghosts. The Lurkers are slicing through the planetary. to the 6 o'clock position. The Infestor's trying to get close, but the siege tank's keeping them well away. Fungal way off the mark. The Overseer's also hanging out, making sure that Ghost Cloak is never a threat. The Lurkers will retreat. The moment he sees the scans, he knows what's coming. Serral. Well, we're getting to the bean counter phase pretty early. Serral with 1,700 gas to 2K in the bank, 5,600 minerals to 1,400. The armies are still relatively cheap. 6,600 and 3,100 for Serral, 5,235 for Maru. Maru still has 78 SCVs, which with 8 orbital commands I think are becoming obsolete. And honestly, the best chance for improvement here for Maru. Also, Serral with 91 drones is still pushing it, but he's finding success, and Maru hasn't been able to take out a hatchery for a while, which is a win of sorts. It's a win. It's a win. All right, unequivocally. Oh, look, man, just make sure there was nothing burrowed underneath. There wasn't, but there could have been. Multiple planetaries. How many planets? He's only got 4 planetaries, and almost none of them are part of the bases. We have 1 over here, but the planetaries are mostly zoning. And why not? They don't cost supply. They are the supply. Much like the Overseers for Serral, in a very similar yet somewhat more unwieldy way. Detection and infinite units. Parasitic Bomb coming through the center. There's a Nidus in the main simultaneously. It's in siege tank range, but Serral dismantles this attack. That's so many banelings. Oh, the siege tank hits quite painful. Serral actually losing enough Overseers here to get supply blocked at 192. If these lurkers are on hold fire, but Serral's still mining relatively comfortably on his side of the map. We haven't really seen many Liberators, just 1 on the field. He's lost a couple of them, but surprisingly few at this stage of the game. As both sides filling in those late game upgrades, the more advanced parts of the unit composition. Mech for Maru, +3 mech weapons is done. Plating has begun. Meanwhile, +2 flyer attack and carapace are completing for Serral, who hasn't built a single flyer attack and carapace unit. Well, technically besides Vipers and Overseers, which benefit from the carapace. But a Corruptor Swell could be a thing. Greater Spire is also an option, but Serral comes in again. Gotta hit the 6 o'clock base. And overwhelm it. 18 SCVs dead. So at this point, I'd be surprised if Maru puts too much of a focus on replacing them. Automation will be replacing all of us eventually. And Maru just trying to speed that along. Few more units, and there it is. The Greater Spire, alongside +3 flyer attack. He's already got 3/3 on the ground, of all varieties. Oof. Oof. Well, the Widowmine not quite able. No. Nuclear launch detected. Pretty sure he spotted. Yeah, he knows. Just knocks out the Ghost. Wasn't exactly subtle. The Marauder. Witness me! I'm desperately trying to get the banelings to hit it. Feel like we might see more of that. Dozen Ghosts. Again, the planetary gonna be smashed. As Serral, again and again. Making sure Maru can't take this base, but each time it costs him some of his units. Once, there used to be 100 Marines and Marauders. Alright, plenty of siege tanks in some variety. But now, it's pretty much just a ghost town. Maru with 12 Ghosts, 5 Marines, 5 Marauders, 17 going on 20 siege tanks. And he just took the 9 o'clock base, which a drone is spotting for. The Lurkers, pre-scanned and burrowed. We take... There's so many siege tanks. That's where the Broodlords come in. If Serral's able to make it there. The Widow Mines taking some bites, but the Zerglings will overrun, and again, this base is denied. But Serral has focused the vast, overwhelming majority of his efforts. There's a single infestor. Just gonna try to keep it in that location. The ghosts! This is it! This is the moment! The infestor, he gets the EMP! But he gets the wraparound! The ghosts! One of them will be saved. But Serral finally found the infestor! The fungal! And he knocks out the overwhelming majority of the most important unit in the game for Maru. He's left with just that one surviving ghost with what a tale to tell. Serral canceling almost as many ghosts as Blizzard themselves at this rate, and the orbital is burning. There's 9 more, so I mean, it's not that big a deal, but kind of indicative of the situation is Serral starting to grind out a much more capable position. Binding Cloud, Widow Mine, oh god. Ooh, that got a big chunk. But the planetary now focused. Maru always has another command center. Wherever Serral focuses his efforts, Maru will mine from the other one. But it's starting to add up. Serral is building up. His bank is not obscene, but he has enough to replace his army. Maru has drained everything. He's still building 4 ghosts at a time, 3 Widow Mines, a couple more tanks. He still has 17 tanks, 11 Corruptors on the way. The switch to the Broodlords could and should be deadly. It needs to be for Serral, of course, as such an investment is, one does not simply go mass Broodlord. The sensor tower's holding everything. Well, at least keeping an eye on everything. Serral has lost 10,000 more resources, including 1,500 less gas, which is crazy. The Widow Mines, mostly cleaned up with acceptable losses. Quite a bloodbath now, though. Maru this time hardens the defense on the base that Serral seemed inevitably going to hit. And does Maru recognize that Serral has backed off? 9 infestors, 11 Broodlords. The end game. And multiple spore crawlers at the front. Serral very clearly reducing the pace of aggression. We'll see if Maru can recognize this for what it is. The thing is, Broodlords are not exactly the quickest unit in the game. In fact, they're maybe the slowest air unit in the entire game. Possibly besides Sloverlords, but the Broodlords will easily dismantle the siege tank line and deny this base. Though he probably wants to have more than 0 Corruptors. Because otherwise the Liberators kind of... This is awkward. Liberators technically have an anti-air attack. It hits like a dry paper bag, but gonna siege up. Okay, yes! Parasitic bomb! Fungal Queens! Maru knocks out 1 base. And Serral's bank, well, his army is now almost twice the expense it was just a few minutes ago. This is the endgame Zerg. And always has been. 3 Thors in production, a couple Vikings. The Nordic composition. Well, Serral should know more than most how dangerous it can be. The fusion core, just now starting. Both players intending to take this base momentarily. Awkward. Can I park here? Sir? Hello? What? Yeah. In fact, oh no, the ghosts! The ghosts! The EMP lands! And despite having 15 overseers, Serral loses... Wait, what did he just lose? the game. Serral spent his entire bank. He could have kept fighting this war of attrition, and it may or may not have been a success. He chose to go for the Broodlords. The Ghost lined up a fusillade of shots, knocked out 2/3 of the Broodlords, the majority of the Infestor energy, and Serral cannot rebuild. He gave up map control to build this army. And this army, there's no neural pair. It's over. Let's see the army. Well, you don't, like, so Maru's mining more than he has in the last several minutes. Oh no. And the queens will be nuked. What an exclamation point. The Thors are able to compete with the Broods directly. Without Neural Parasite, they are an existential threat to similar numbers of Broodlords. Without even factoring in the Ghosts. But the Ghosts cannot be ignored. Maru holds. He waits for his opportunity. And he finds it. I mean, we see how quickly we went from a relatively even game to total and utter disaster. We gotta see Serral's camp. Serral trying to set up this base. He's got a hotkey for a little bit of everything. Spore Crawler's moving forward. Injects. There's siege tanks here. We gotta deal with this. Alright, moving the drones away. And this is the exact moment. Put it all together. Such different parts of the army have to be controlled simultaneously. Maru forcing the issue. He's got that bio army on the right side. He's staying dangerous. There's a siege tank. Okay. Fine. All right. Siege tank. Oh, no, 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 no! Oh! Literally 2 seconds looking the wrong way. But he didn't have an overseer on the Broodlord keep. That was the completely understandable yet critical mistake. And while he didn't lose the game outright there's no money to come back. Maru on the cusp of victory. Serral, unable to recreate the success of game number 1. He tries a different angle. He tries the Broodlords as the game ender, which historically they very much have been. But Maru waits for his opportunity. He captures it. This is the most Maru thing I have ever seen. Maru up 3-1. He's gonna do a proxy 3 racks all in. Now, this is a build that is relatively easy to hold if it's scouted. But Serral has not been doing a particularly conservative pool timing. His Overlord is being sent out, and Maru is putting this so far away. It's not. He's relying entirely on the element of surprise as opposed to it hitting incredibly quickly. And, God, this is so Maru. Maru returning to his roots. A player who is very willing. The series starts, match point, lose a game, win a game, proxy racks. There were a couple years where Maru, a solid 1 in 3 to 1 in almost 2 games were a proxy of some sort. He hasn't done one this entire series. It's been macro game. It's in a constant jousting match back and forth as they tilt at one another. But we'll see if Don Quixote finally finds his white whale. Or if Serral is able to turn it around and figure out which of those references was accurate. The drones are pulled off the line. The bunker is laid down. There's more Marines on the way. He needs to stop this before it starts. He needs to minimize the drone damage. Sometimes these are almost contradictory things. Microing back the SCVs just to muck up the micro, but a good surround gets a couple of the Marines. 6 drones dead. The SCV has almost completed the racks. It won't quite, but there's 2 more SCVs nearby. The Marine's gonna be able to target down some more, just cancels it. Not worth the effort. Serral is already behind on workers, but he still has 2 bases for now. The Overlord is just hanging out in the main. There's no gas back there. A single queen. Another one pulled down. This is it, Brenda! Yeah, I'm aware, Susan. I don't... He's still just building Marines. It's not like he has a small amount of SCVs at home. A mule mining, he can continue building 3 Marines at a time. Serral does not even have Zergling speed on the way. He's going for it. But here's the hard part. Well, oh, the rest of the... send everyone! Serral didn't make a spine crawler. The Overlord, I think, was slightly out of position to see this. If he had built a spine crawler, I don't think he sends the boys. But Maru, for the entire championship. For his first victory against Serral in years. Pulls the boys off the line. And Serral, 26 Zerglings against 17 Marines. The boys are here. There's not enough energy for transfuse. The queens are on the run. The drones have to be pulled yet again, but he can't afford to do so, but he can't afford not to. Maru is stutter-stepping forward. After so many late-game extravaganzas, the early-game cheese, the SCVs boxing out, sacrificing their lives, so Maru might achieve victory. GG, WP, Serral taps it out, and Maru, with a decisive 4 games, defeats Serral with only 1. Wow. Maru with the triple racks bunker rush to take it home. Serral winning, I believe, the longest game of the series. And it was all downhill from there. Maru having his number. Serral struggling with multiple Zerg compositions. Maru has found his stride yet again in every matchup. If you haven't watched Maru over the last few months, well, where have you been? And welcome back. But against Raynor, against Clem, there are no other Terrans on that level, and Clem plays Protoss, so really it's not really a competition. Against Serral, where we're going to have the people chiming in like, actually, when you say greatest of all time, you should consider Maru. And also MVP. Okay, but, wow. Well, that's certainly an unexpected, but certainly not impossible result. Serral with just not measuring up. And Maru back in force. I hope you enjoy. Thank you to the LiuLi Cup for an incredible year in tournament. This was the year-end finals of 2025, which they usually hold because of the Chinese New Year is around this time. So I'm looking forward to more, and I hope it made your day at least a little bit better. Thank you for watching. If you got the means of motivation, be awesome to check out Patreon or YouTube membership. But I hear liking and subscribing is still free. At least for now. Thank you to our Mule Tier patrons for bringing in the extra minerals. Big G, Devin Door, Kate, Mario, Soup. Glad you still enjoy. And to everyone, make sure to check out this video or one of those Maru videos. Might be the same one. Jimmy picked it out just for you. So thank you for watching. Good luck. Have fun. Congratulations to Maru. And I'll see you next time. Stay chill.